In this video, we're going to be looking at my top 15 most anticipated board games of 2024. Hi, my name's Danny. I'm an avid modern board gamer from Australia who loves sharing my passion for this hobby with you, my friends, and my family. Come and join me on this journey. Cheers! Hey Danny, are you ready to celebrate the new year and are you excited for 2024? But it's not even Christmas yet. I haven't even opened the presents that you gave me. Happy New Year! Board game number 15 is one that has an interesting theme. Think of Back to the Future, but with engine building and tableau building. Basically, what you're going to be doing in the game Restart is you're going to be playing cards which represent food, technology, energy, and society that you play onto your board, which represents kind of like your mind or the character that you're playing, or you're going to be placing them on a shared space board by creating chaining patterns of cards. You're also going to be shifting between two different time periods, going into the past and going into the future. In the past, you're going to try and create patterns of cards that change and alter the course of some negative events that could happen in the future, like a zombie apocalypse or avoiding the pandemic altogether. When you play these event cards into the shared board space, these create cool chaining patterns that are going to affect everyone else's ability to reshape the future. It is a game of collecting resources, creating cool combos, and if you like Marty McFly and you want to go back and change the course of history, then this might be a tableau building game for you. One of my friends recently asked me whether I would like to go camping. I had to think about it for a minute because I've only ever been camping once in my life, and that was when I had to do a 2-day overnight walk, and my friend who brought the tent forgot to bring the tent pegs, and we ended up just sleeping under the moon on the beach anyway. It was a very interesting and it was an amazing experience. Actually, I have also been glamping once as well. So this next game is one that's centered around that camping experience, doing activities, entering a national park and trying to reach Bear Mountain campsite first. It's a racing game where players are going to be managing not one, but 2 decks. By managing a day deck and a night deck and the different activities that you can do, you're going to be able to go around, complete activities, and store tokens and visit every different colored campsite that's available on this national park map. If you do that and then go off-road, and then get to the Bear Mountain campground first, you win the game. There's something really cool about the way this map looks. The fact that wherever you choose to camp your camper van, campsite will indicate what sort of cards you'll get to draw from both of your decks. The idea that you're adding cards to these decks, you're thinking about how you're going to power both the engine in both of the decks, and you're literally precariously balancing the effect of both of the decks each and every turn. And the cards that you draw will be determined by which deck and which campsite that you go to. Koinobori is a game where players are going to be building festival flags. Now, this is a game where the decision space is going to be incredibly tight, where players are constantly torn between what they should actually do. And I love games that do this. Basically, each player is going to have a mast pole in front of them. And there's also going to be a center mast pole, I think known as the festival pole, that all players are going to share. There's also going to be a row of flags that players will be able to draft from. And basically, players are going to be taking cards and then putting them either face down on their mast, which gives you an ability in the game, or put it face up on the central festival mast. And you might be thinking, why would I contribute to the central mast? Because at the end of the game, whichever color flag is most predominant on that festival mast is going to be the one that's scored in all players' individual masts. Oh my goodness. So not only do you have to try and collect the masks of the colors that you want and put them on your pole, you also have to contribute those colors to the center mask so that you can ensure that you're going to actually get the high score at the end of the game. Now, this reminds me of Arboretum and games like Songbirds, where every single card is going to matter. No matter where you place it, it's going to have a consequential effect on the end game. There's another interesting element to this game, and that that is when you put your cards face down, which kind of has like a hidden aspect to the game, so that you kind of have to memorize, ooh, does that player have more yellows, or does this player have more blues? I don't know. But the cards on the backs also have abilities that allow you to access different cards in the drafting row a little bit more readily. You might be able to access, the cards from the ends of the row more easily compared to the cards in the middle of the row. There's lots of different things that are going to come into play. And not only that, at the end of the game, you're going to be building these beautiful koi flags that just look absolutely spectacular. And if you're a long-time subscriber to this channel, you know that I love all things aquatic animals, terrariums, plants, paludariums, cherry shrimp, nanotanks, you name it. It's in the background of my videos, and it's probably my second favorite hobby after board gaming. This next game, which is number 13 on my list, features just that. The idea that you're building a cool coral reef system to sustain life and allow things to flourish and grow. And the game is called Aqua. Aqua is basically a simple hex tile laying game where you're basically going to connect coral clusters together to create hexagons of single colors. You're then going to attract particular aquatic life to those clusters of corals to hopefully build out a rising reef system. Once you've built a cluster of animals and reefs together, you hopefully attract larger aquatic animals like sharks that will hopefully be able to sit on top of your reef. And if you can do that, you'll be able to escalate and elevate the number of points that you get. It's a simple game of color matching, hexagon building, layering, and tile placing that, it sounds like it's probably going to be a great filler game in my group because it's just so easy to teach and so easy to just dive into, pun intended, actually. The next game I want to talk about is probably something that's on a bucket list of mine to do, and that is to travel to Japan. Now, I've been to so many different places around Southeast Asia. I've been to Vietnam. I went on a really cool trip with my dad. If you don't know, my dad was a Vietnamese war refugee, and it was literally 30 years after he left where we decided we were going to go back to Vietnam and actually see what had changed. And it was such a emotional, heartfelt experience, and to be able to do that journey from Hanoi all the way down to his hometown in southern Vietnam was just a beautiful thing to be able to share with him. This next game is all about planning a trip to Japan, and it's called Let's Go to Japan. It's aptly named, I think. And basically it's a puzzly sort of card drafting game where you're placing different cards out in your tableau to try and visit as many different sites as possible in Tokyo and Kyoto. And so what you're going to do is basically draft cards, and then the cards that you place, you're not going to really trigger them until you actually go on your trip. So this is kind of like the pre-planning phase of planning a holiday. And I know that I often use an Excel spreadsheet when it comes to planning all these trips, and then actually going on the trip and using the spreadsheet and actually seeing, whoa, look at all these things come to life. It's just a brilliant connection. So this is really cool because you're picking the places that you want to see. You're trying to connect them to icons that are on your diary, I guess, that help to satisfy those needs. And then as you trigger your walk at the end of the game, you're going to visit each of those places, and that's going to lead on to triggering your accumulation of bonus points across your holiday. And I think you also have to play into the fact that you have to travel between Tokyo and Kyoto throughout the game, and you don't want to zip forward and backwards because that can kind of waste time on your trip. It has a beautiful thematic connection. I love the hand-drawn art, and this is just a game that I think would be a great game to play with a family. Number 10 is by a game designer that I have truly admired for a long time, with games like Castles of Burgundy, Bonfire, and even Marrakesh under his belt. This is probably one of the best game designers in the industry, and that is the great Stefan Feld. One of his games that I'm looking forward to next year, which I heard is a very long game, but it's a very interesting Euro, and it's called Civolution. Basically in Civolution, you're going to be attending an academy and you're going to be put to the test. You're going to be creating your own civilization, and you're going to be following and activating different tech trees on this kind of computer console device, which is the board game basically, or your player board. On the console device, you'll use dice to power up different columns of actions. You can use duplicate dice to, upgrade some of those actions, and I heard there's about 21 different actions altogether that you can resolve. The game essentially follows the 3X's. You're going to be expanding, exploiting, and exploring. By doing those 3 things, you're going to garner victory points and pass the exam. It's kind of a weird context to kind of just situate or simulate this in. So you're kind of playing a board game where you're simulating growing a civilization and tribes, and then based on the success of that simulation, you pass or fail the test. I don't know, it's kind of a strange theme, but using the dice activation system, you're going to create combos and chains of effects. Now, I've only literally scraped the surface of beginning to explain the depth of this game to you. I know it was demoed at one of the board game conventions early this year, but yeah, it's a game that just has that kind of bio but futuristic science fiction vibe to it. I absolutely love unique 2-player games, and the next game I'm so excited to play is a game which pits an octopus against a shark. And I think this game was inspired by the Netflix show Octopus My Teacher. It's basically pitting 2 different species head to head, with one player playing as the shark, who's going to be gaining dice, building dice in their bag, and then rolling those dice and triggering particular effects and actions that they can use to try and scope out where the octopus is hidden. And the octopus player is going to be using a deck building mechanism to try and evade detection by the shark by hiding behind these kind of mahjong style tiles where you can swap them around and try and outmaneuver the shark player. The octopus is going to also be trying to feed, so it's going to be try to eat shrimp. I think that's one of its victory conditions. And one really cool part of this game is that when the shark does uncover the location of the octopus, there is a head-to-head moment where you're going to be flipping cards and then seeing whether the octopus has a chance to flinch and escape from being attacked by the shark. And I think the shark has a limited amount of time, because the shark is going to eventually run out of energy, and if the shark can't capture the octopus in time, then the octopus player is going to win. I'm an avid collector of 2-player abstract games. I've got games like Santorini and Hive, which is one of my favorite. In fact, at the top of this shelf, I actually have a whole collection of other 2-player board games that I love getting out to play with my husband. So when I heard about this next indie game, which is a game that I don't think many people have heard about, mainly because it's comes from a very small first-time publisher and designer, I was immediately drawn to the Tibetan art style as well as the Tibetan culture that is expressed through the game. And once you see the cover of this game, oh my goodness, it looks so beautiful. It kind of evokes that sense, if you've ever seen that game Cosmic Frog, it kind of has that similar art style. And I've got a game in my collection called Inish, which also it kind of evokes that really cool hand-drawn art technique. The game I'm talking about is called Tibetana, which is basically a 2-player game where players are going to be controlling their own factions. You're going to be moving your factions across this hex map, and depending on the colored tile of the hex map, so the terrain type, you'll be able to channel the energy from that terrain in order to build these pagodas. In order to win the game, you have to be the first player to build 3 5-story pagodas on the game map. You've got these people that can extract the energy, which helps you to build the buildings. And then you've got these army people called the Sentinels, which are going to help protect these channelers that build the pagodas. And then you've also got these deities that are going to arise from the landscape. And the deities can be used by either player. So whichever player activates them can use that deity's special asymmetric power and their game-breaking abilities. And then by using those abilities, you can hopefully gain an advantage over the other player and get to the win condition first. This next game I want to talk about reminds me of a game that I had when I was a kid, and that is called Forbidden Bridge, where basically you're trying to sail your boat up this little jungle river, climb up a mountain, cross a bridge, and you press the idol, and basically you try to steal the jewels of the idol, and if the bridge shook and you fell into the river, you'd lose that idol. It was a really tense game which had a really cool practical element to it, and I still remember it to this day. The next game on my list was called Mayan Curse. It's a game where you're going to be racing into a Mayan temple, collecting knowledge in the form of different idols, taking photographs, and trying to escape the temple before the boulders seal the entrance. Simple as it sounds? No, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. Basically, on your turn, you're going to be drawing 3 tiles from a bag, and those tiles are going to have 3 icons on it. This temple is littered with different icons, and if you've ever seen, I think, one of those Indiana Jones movie where the floor is got 20 different symbols, and you got to step on the symbol in a particular order in order to not trigger the booby traps, then this is that sort of game. You're going to be moving across shifting platforms which are going to be controlled by you and the other players, and you're going to try and line up the icons so it matches the 3 that you've got. You can also trade 2 similar icons in for any other icon of your choice. You're going to be walking through, reaching these knowledge idols and then taking them into your possession, and each knowledge idol has a different range of victory points that are revealed at the end of the game, and there's 3 different grade levels. At the very, very back of this temple, there's kind of this rotating disc structure, and if you can climb to the top of that, take a photo and grab that camera, you can get an additional 15 points. So part of this tension in this game comes from that timing element. How fast those boulder dice are moving towards the entrance. Do you have enough time to go really deep into the temple, or do you have enough time to kind of grab what you can and get out in time? The next game I'm really excited about is by acclaimed designer Elizabeth Hargrave, the designer of Wingspan. This next game has you exploring a symbiotic nature relationship between trees and fungi. It is a game called Undergrove. Undergrove has players starting with starting tiles that have mushrooms with particular abilities, and then basically you're building a grid of mushrooms in your forest. Each of the corners of these tiles also has a little gap where you can plant seeds, grow trees, and then the roots from those trees spread out and help you to synergize with the abilities of the mushrooms surrounding it. So this game really focuses in on exploring that symbiosis relationship that plants and mushrooms and fungi have, and being able to nitrogen fix, use carbon to spend to activate the abilities of these unique mushrooms on the forest floor means that you can help your trees to flourish and grow. And I think I like the idea of using the roots of the trees to trigger adjacency effects, and being able to explore this scientific concept in such a cool, beautiful board game is something that really excites me. Do you like the idea of going and taking pictures of beautiful landscapes, traveling afar and journaling all in a beautiful photo album? Well, the next game just might pique your interest. Number 5 on my list is called Photo Tour North America. Basically, it's a game where you'll be drafting landmark cards into your hands, then you'll be rolling some dice, using the dice to transport by plane, by car, and by walking to different locations across North America and Canada. And then when you get to those locations, if you can play the landmark card, I guess bulk up your inventory with lots of different photographic equipment, you can then gain the ability that is listed on the landmark card that's been tucked into your journal. Across the game, you'll be visiting up to 7 different locations. You'll be playing 7 different landmark cards, each with their own unique abilities, and using those abilities, you'll be able to fly, drive, and move around the board a lot more powerfully and a lot more quickly, because it does have an element of engine building in it in order to gain as many victory points as possible, as well as curate the best photo album possible, of course. I love this game ID just because I love taking photography. This is a simple game that I know that my family will be able to play, and the added value of using dice to try and navigate your way around the board is a cool little easy touch that's going to keep the game feel exciting. I love animals and anything to do with animal conservation. I love aquatic animals in particular, as you can see with my vast array of aquariums in my home, but also I just love the idea of conserving and protecting living things and nature. And so when this next game came along, I was like, whoa, this is a game with a cool theme and a really simple rule set, yet it delivers that message of creating an environment that makes people aware that conservation of these natural and amazing animal species is so crucial for the future. And Kavango is a game where players are going to be conservationists. They're going to be building reserves which are going to house animals that they'd like to protect. And basically players are going to start with a landscape board at the beginning of the game. They're going to be playing over 3 rounds. Players will be picking 10 cards and then drafting them, and then eventually at the end of each round, each player would have played 10 cards into their tableau. Now there are different types of cards. There's action cards you can play. There's producer cards which you tuck at the top of your board where you use those icons, which then allows you to play bigger and larger animal species. And I think in the first round, you're kind of building low-level animals, and then in the second and third round, you're going to be building much larger. You're going to be able to consume the smaller animals that you built in the first round. You are contributing collectively as a group, so semi-cooperatively, to protecting these animals by earning income, donating to the Animal Protection Fund, and based on your level of protection, you'll be able to build certain species later on. Have you ever wanted to curate your own vintage collection of cheese? I know I love eating cheese, except for blue cheese. Well, in this next game, which is number 3 on my list, it's all about curating cheese in France in the early 20th century, and the game is called Fromage. There are some cool, unique things that are happening in this game where it's basically essentially a worker placement game where you're going to be making cheese by placing workers out and then retrieving them later on. What's cool about and unique about this game is the fact that it features a lazy Susan, which is divided into 4 quadrants. Whichever quadrant is facing you becomes your active section of the board, and at the end of each round, the board will rotate 90 degrees, and all of a sudden, the quadrants have changed. And so what you're trying to do here is you're competing against the other players in 4 little mini games. It might be making the biggest connected groups, or it could have the greatest area control, or it could be fulfilling different table orders. You could even deploy your workers into the center part of your quadrant to gain resources, and the more resources that you retrieve, the longer it will take for your worker to come back to you, because you don't actually retrieve a worker in this game back to your hand until it's facing you once again. And you'll see that as the board rotates, the direction in which your workers that you've placed faces will rotate with the board itself. So this rotating mechanism is something I haven't seen before, and I can see that this theme is quite unique, which I also haven't seen before. And the fact that the board itself looks like a giant block of cheese makes me super hungry, to be honest. But the number 2 most anticipated game for 2024 on my list is the second mushroom themed game on my list, and for some reason mushroom seems to be the flavor of the month because there are so many mushroom games coming out all at the same time. I can probably list 3 off the top of my head, but oh my goodness, this is probably the coolest mushroom game out of the lot, and it is Mycelia, the strategic mushroom game. Interesting title. But I think I'm more invested in how this game actually works. You've got these triangular piece resource tiles where you're going to be building your mushrooms and creating your mycelial network, which will help you to grow mushrooms out in front of you. You're basically moving like a mother mushroom piece in order to block other players, to spread your spores, but also to gain bonuses as well. When you've kind of growing your mushrooms, they can then decay, and when they decay, you flip them over, tuck them under, and then you also gain their ability on the back, which kind of helps fuel your engine. I just like this idea of having like a mycelial network. Mushrooms can create spores, and then you roll the wind die, and the wind die literally determines the direction in which those spores actually flow. I just think that really reflects how fungi grow and propagate, and I just think this game really captures it in a Euro sense quite well. So this is the moment you've been waiting for, my number 1 most anticipated game of 2024. This choice is probably one that feels more personal. This is just one that has been on my radar for a very long time, and I know that this particular game has actually already had 2 editions prior to the one that's coming out in 2024. In fact, they've taken the original game, jazzed it up a little bit with different art, expanding the iconography as well as the size of the game and the deluxe components that are included in the game. The game is called Yokohama. Yes, Yokohama is coming out with a reskinned edition. I have like a little president character and some little helpers, and you're placing these helpers out on different rectangular spaces that are kind of modular that fit together. And what you're doing is you're acquiring silk, you're going fishing, And then you're also trying to fulfill orders and increase your business empire as you play the game. What's really interesting about the game is the geography of how these modular boards fit together. They kind of make like a reverse pyramid, and where you move, you can only move to places where you've got cubes placed out. And what's really also cool about the game is that when you move into a location and you want to activate the effect of that location, depending on the number of cubes that you have already there, including your president, that's the strength of the power of getting that particular action or resolving that action or getting that amount of resource. You can also build little houses and warehouses that kind of give you victory points that feature on these little grid cards. And then by covering up those victory points and having those warehouses there, anytime you go back to that location, those places actually count as one strength. And so it's a game about growing opportunities, but just being able to expand and connect and develop your system of gaining these points throughout the game is actually incredibly fun. And I have heard that it's a little bit more of a next level Istanbul, and I've played Istanbul quite a lot and I really love that game. But yeah, this is kind of a bit of a quirky choice for me for number one. Usually in past years, I've often chosen like a brand new game that has just really kind of enthralled me. But this year it's kind of been a little bit mellowed. I think I've gone in a different direction and really looked for some of those really cool classical games where it's just like, oh, I just really love that theme. I love that gameplay. I love that art. I have actually sourced a secondhand copy of the original Yokohama, but it was incredibly expensive. So I do have that original version coming. I haven't been able to play it yet, but I am so excited. I think it's due to arrive in January actually. But yeah, the person that I bought it from so generously have upgraded the components. They've even got little cool insets to put all the pieces. Yeah, I'm just super excited to play Yokohama. I've been excited for a long time now, and yeah, it's definitely one to get into next year. And I know that the reskinned version of Yokohama has been met with a little bit of discussion in terms of its art style and its font style. Some people are saying that's probably not as authentic and true to the Japanese culture as it should be in terms of the particular region and the time frame that the game is set in. So I'm curious to see whether the art will change and evolve by August 2024. So what do you think of those board games? Any of those board games on your list? Have you heard some of those before? Or are they fresh to your ears and piqued your interest? Please let me know in the comment section below. Do you have your own list? Is there a way that you've kind of curated those games that you're actively searching for? Now, if you really like this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. If you want to see more amazing videos like this, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where you get access to some exclusive Patreon-only exclusive videos. Otherwise, I hope your new year is going to be an amazing one, and I hope that your next board game experience will be fun. This is Danny signing out. See you again soon.